Hi guys, welcome back to Planet Mithril. So last week I asked you to send me in your questions and boy, you did not disappoint. You delivered tenfold, and today I'm going to be answering as many questions as I possibly can in this video, all related to hobby, to wargaming, to tactics, those things that I tend to use but really have no idea how they actually work, and life in general. And I'm also a little bit disappointed. Nobody asked me what my favourite food was, so you're never going to find out now. But without further ado, let's get started. Firstly, thank you very much. Secondly, I struggle with batch painting, mainly because I'd have the attention span of a gnat, and the idea of painting. I mean, I've got 5 Red Heron Warriors on the table that I've tried to batch paint now, and the idea of finishing those is ridiculous to me right now. Obviously, I mean, it depends on the project. And if you've got a lot of the same kind of model, Urukai Gondorians, there's kind of same easy to replicate models, it's much easier to batch paint. I'm the kind of person who I will tend to paint a model through to completion and then start on the next one. I can maybe do 2 or 3. That's kind of where my level of attention tends to stay. Obviously for heroes and characters, I spend a lot more time on them, and they deserve the extra time, the extra love, because they are focal pieces within your army. But batch painting is one of those lofty things that I've always wanted to try and do properly and get done, but Tom Painter Brain just means I can't really do it. I really struggle. To my detriment most of the time. So when I first started, and for a long time during my painting career, if you like, I have been mainly just using Citadel brushes for whatever iteration they were. And I remember having a set of the heavy metal brushes they brought in the little metal tin once upon a time, and they were my favourite. That I used them for everything back in the day. The last 4 or 5 years is really coming where I've been kind of branching out into other brushes, and I developed a particular fondness for broken toed brushes. I've got a couple left over there who are nearing the end of their lifespan. I'm trying to eke that out as much as I can, because apparently you can't get hold of them anymore, which is a real shame, because they were some of the nicest brushes I've used. But in the absence of that and looking for other brushes, I have now developed a fondness for Artist Opus brushes, and they are probably the best brushes I've ever used. I'll be using them going forward in most of my hobby work now, because the quality of the brushes is incredible. And they're really great. They've got some great sizes, and they've got every kind of size that you need to do whatever you need. They've got dry brushes, they've got small detail, they've got layer brushes. The quality, I think, is second to none personally. I still use the Citadel brushes for the bulk of like my workhorse stuff, so army painting. Yeah, I tend to use a mix of Citadel and Artist Opus overall. And I'm coming to the end of using my broken toad, and I'm so sad about that. A guide for good brush care is something I've been thinking about for a while now, and something I haven't just got around to doing yet. It's a super good shout, and thank you for reminding me about that. Brush care is super important when it comes to hobbying, particularly because the brushes, let's be fair, aren't the cheapest in the world, particularly things like your Artist Opus, your Broken Toad, your Winsor Newtons. You know, it's good that they're maintained and looked after properly. Some key tips I can give: brush shampoo, which is something I am guilty of not using quite as much as I probably should do. I've started now, and it's making a world of difference. If only I remembered before I got to the end of the lifespan of these poor broken toad brushes. The splay is real. Also, not letting paint dry on your bristles, super important. Make sure they are thoroughly clean after every time you apply paint to a model. I would recommend cleaning with cold water rather than warm water, because warm water will get underneath the filament here and will melt the glue that holds the bristles in place, and then you'll start losing bristles. I've had a number of times where I've been painting models and suddenly I've got a furry tank, which is ridiculous, although unique. Yeah, and when you've finished painting a particular model or a particular bit of a model, give your brush a good clean and give it a dry on some kitchen roll or some suitable fabric, and give it a spin while you go, just to reinforce that point on the brush. Or you can take the patented Planet Mithril approach of just lick and spin. Again, much with my brushes, I've been using Citadel for a long time. I know those paints, I know the limitations of them, and I know what you can achieve with them. All the way through the foundation paints and the changing of the ranges. Yeah, I've had a lot of Citadel paints over my tenure as a painter. I have branched out into other paints. I have tried Vallejo, I've tried Army Painter, both of which are really good. But if I could swear by one particular paint brand now, it would be Scale 75. Which is only a recent one in the grand scheme of things that I've been experimenting with. And for me, they are just super fun to use. They've got quite a rich pigmentation, so the colours go a lot further. particularly once you thin them down, like you don't lose as much of the intensity of the paint, and they give a really lovely matte finish when they're done, a super like crisp feel, and it really, they've kind of really struck a chord. I use Citadel for the majority of my Games Workshop models because it's easier when you're following a guide if you've got all the paints in one place. My Scale 75 I tend to use more for my Marvel Crisis models, my Star Wars Shatterpoint models, and my Malifaux models. And I've still got a lot of love for Citadel, don't get me wrong, but I think Scale 75 would have to be the, if I could choose one painted brand, yeah, it would be Scale 75 going forward, because they're just super fun to use. They really give a lovely effect when you finish them on. Dry brushing is your friend. The bigger the dry brush, the quicker your ruins are going to get done, the better your effect's going to look overall. It depends kind of what colour ruins you want. If you want slightly more like stony, like Dol Guldur type ruins, those grey kind of mottled stones, start with a really dark grey base coat, something like a Mechanicus, and then just work your way up, progressing through Dawnstone, Administratum, and then you can hit with a little bit of Ulthran or Pallid Wych right at the top if you really want to just pick up the upper texture of the brickwork. More tan work, like your Asciliath Ruins, your White City of Minas Tirith, that kind of thing. I started particularly, and this should be you haven't been looking at my guides, just saying. I started from a Rakarth base coat, and then I worked my way up through, I think it was Carrickstone, and again working my way up to a light of Pallid Wych Flesh. Yeah, I got my dry brush, loaded up, and I went to town on these ruins. Absolutely just wrecked them with a dry brush. You don't have to be quite so precise when it comes to which direction you're dry brushing, because the texture of the stonework will pick up the paint whichever way you're going, and actually will give you some more interesting textures to the brickwork when you finish. And then you can stipple some areas, and you can add some extra details. Obviously, if you want some moss, you can add some light sheen or some tufts, just to give it that little bit of uniqueness and a little bit more personality when you're done. Don't. White is always one of those ones that's really kind of hard to nail, but I don't know what it is. I've struggled to find like white paints that really work for me. I don't know what it is. When you thin them down, the pigment breaks apart a bit more. I can't work out what it is, but I've struggled to find a white. The whites that I find work for me are in the Scale 75 range, mainly because they hold their pigment a bit better. Ultimately, it's about building up layers with multiple thin down coats of white, waiting for the previous layer to dry before you carry on, and the more you build that up, the crisper and more solid your white will get. I don't tend to use pure white until I get to my upper highlights, because I want to have that maneuverability of having an edge highlight and showing where the light is hitting off the most pronounced features of a model, without having already gone to too light a layer stage previously. For like Space Marines, for your white scars, probably best you work off kind of like a bluey grey, and then build up again, adding white, adding your lighter greys through that. For your warmer whites, your Saruman, your Gandalf robes kind of thing, again I'll work off like a Rakarth or a Wraithbone, and then just build up from there. And again, it's all about just multiple thin down layers, being patient as you go. That's the key thing. As soon as you rush painting white, you get brush strokes, you get blemishes in your white, and you haven't got a smooth finish, and it just doesn't look very nice afterwards. It's the hardest colour, I would say, to paint, second to, well, it's kind of up there with yellow, personally. I would always recommend working off a grey or a white spray undercoat rather than black. I've done that before, and it's meant that I've had some sad Gandalfs in the past. But I've got some guides. Check out my Gandalf guide on the channel as well. That's a particularly good one for painting white. It goes through a couple of different recipes of painting white, because obviously Gandalf the White, but he's got a lot of different whites on him. Shadowfax is kind of, like I said, the Space Marines working off that kind of bluey grey, and Gandalf working off those warmer whites to get to the model that I wanted at the end. So check out that if you want a detailed guide for how I paint different varieties of white. It's probably the most encompassing guide I have at this stage. Kind of hard to describe kind of my thought process in this. I can't work out if it's just because I've done it so long that I kind of have that base level knowledge of what I know is going to work, what's going to look good on a model. It's possibly that. Obviously, no painting journey is without its foibles and without its models that have gone wrong. I am guilty in the past for having multiple models that I've either thrown away or have, in some darker times, hit walls when I've been particularly stressed, and paints haven't gone the way I wanted them to go, looks haven't gone the way I wanted to go. I would always recommend testing paint schemes on spare models that you're not sure about. If nothing else, this will give you an idea of what paints will work together, what paints won't, and maybe give you an idea of how the finished model will look. Because I know you've all got spare grey plastic. Do not hide your piles of shame from me. I can see them behind you. Having some knowledge of the colour wheel and colour theory also will really help. It's something that I looked at a long time ago and actually haven't really paid much attention to after that. Which I probably should do, because if I'm educated, then I need to have everything to the forefront of my mind. But that really helped at the beginning of my journey, and I think I've just kind of progressed from there. Ultimately, for me, it's all been trial and error. Just experimenting, trying different things, and seeing what worked. And you'll see, particularly through my videos as well, that I've got specific recipes for specific things that I've kind of picked up and I've made work, and they're kind of like my sacred Jedi texts. Never be afraid to try anything, because you never know what you're going to stumble upon if you put some colours together on a model. I don't really know how I got to the edge highlighting kind of style that I've got. Every painter, I feel, developed their own style. A lot of people are better at the wet blending and the building up kind of subtle tones there. Apparently my style has gone towards more of a harsh line and a harsh edge highlight, which definitely has its place, particularly on models, with a lot of armor, a lot of plate work, and a lot of like very defined cloth. I tend to find it works quite well with. Where I struggle is a little bit more on the more muscular models, the more like subtle models, where an edge highlight doesn't quite work. So I'm still learning and developing my skills, working on the blending and the building up different areas on different models. The best practice I can recommend for developing your edge highlighting skills is painting Space Marines, because there's a lot of plate work, there's a lot of harsh lines, and you will learn very quickly with a Space Marine that the tighter you can keep your highlight lines, the better the marine will look overall. I don't always use the tip of a brush. I find that if you use the edge of a brush, as long as you haven't overloaded your brush with paint, which is where the kind of the delicate balance comes in, you get an awful lot more control over where your highlight's going to go, because only a certain amount of paint will come off from that angle. Whereas if you're holding your brush down, the paint will start to just naturally run off the end of the brush anyway. So you're going to have to be a little bit quicker and a little bit more controlled that way. But if you're using the edge of a brush, you will have a lot more control over where your highlight goes, particularly over larger areas and more. I don't tend to get rid of brushes until I've really got no use for them anymore, which is why I'm trying to eke out these broken toe brushes. They've gone from my edge highlighting brushes now, and they're now my kind of layering brushes, and very soon they'll be my texture paint brushes. But yeah, a good tip is always good to have when you're doing edge highlighting, but you can do any kind of work like that with the edge of a brush, providing you've got a good shape to the brush. If they start splaying, then you're going to end up with random streaks of the model, which you don't want, which obviously takes away from the definition of the edge highlighting. But yeah, that will just come back down to brush care, which again I'll go over in a later video, but hopefully I've answered a little question about that earlier on as well. I found that using a wet palette is a game changer, not necessarily just for filling paints, but just for keeping the consistency of the paint consistent. Gives you a lot more life in your paints when you're working. When it comes to me thinning my paints, I tend to just stick to Lamia medium and contrast medium, add a little bit at a time. Remember, you can always add more thinner gauge. You can't take it away. And the last thing you want to do is waste paint. So I'm famous for wasting paint. My palette is a mess, which is why you'll very rarely see it. Yeah, so just add a little bit at a time, and you'll find that a little goes a long way. The last thing you want to end up is with a consistency of skim milk. Okay, we're looking for same skin paint. It's kind of what you want for your models. I'm not really the best one to offer any kind of solid advice on this, and I certainly wouldn't recommend anything that I haven't done myself. I don't tend to strip plastic models myself. I don't really know why that is. I think mainly it's from the perspective of I don't necessarily think I have the attention span to kind of keep an eye on it as much as I should, and I don't know enough about the chemicals used to make the best selection myself, and I'm terrified of just taking the model out and then suddenly he's got no face, or his arms blended into his leg, or the details worn down and he's missing a nose. He's got the Voldemort treatment. So I don't tend to strip plastic models. I know that a lot of people swear by isopropyl alcohol, which is apparently one of the best things you can use. I know BioStrip back in the day was something as well. I don't know whether that's still relevant now. Again, I never did it then, and I haven't experimented now either. But yeah, you just give the model a soak and then a gentle rub with a toothbrush. Metal models I have done, and I tend to use pure acetone for those because they're a lot more robust and a lot hardier, and it's a lot harder for the chemical to eat through the metal, although some have tried it in the past. I have a particularly sad hobbit somewhere, which I left in acetone for a day. The melty boy. He looks like an extra in Raiders of the Lost Ark when they opened the Ark. So, yeah, that was a particularly bad way to be a hobbit. But yeah, so I know it's probably not the answer you want, but I wouldn't want to recommend something fully without having tested it and done it myself. So actually, maybe that's an idea. We could actually do a video experimenting in different ways to strip models. So actually, thank you for that. I will do some research and we'll go into it a bit more detail, and I can actually do a full video on how you strip them safely and maintain the detail of your models. So thank you. Are you telling me you don't watch the videos? No, I'm only joking. Yes, for the Thera Complected of Middle-earth, I do tend to work off a lighter undercoat. Not too stark an undercoat difference, because I want to obviously make sure it still looks like a normal face as such, but I work off kind of a Bugman's Cadian mix rather than just a pure Bugman's, which I tend to do for most men-size models and most other people in Middle-earth. And then I work up with lighter highlights of Kislev flesh and occasionally Flavon flesh to get those upper highlights and really kind of give them the sharpness that the elven kind need in their models. Likewise with dwarves, I tend to work off a lower or a darker base coat than Bugman's, and then I don't quite go as far with the lighter tones, just to kind of represent their, dwarves. They're a bit rosier in the face, a bit more stout, a bit more hardy, and they don't get an awful lot of sun. So yes, yes, there is fluctuation in how I do my skin pigments. It depends ultimately on the complexity of the model. A lot of models have a lot of armor plating, your Gondorians, your Uruk-hai, your elves to some degree as well. But yeah, so it depends on the complexity of the model and the particular material you're painting. I tend to always go for a fine edge highlight across things where the model allows me, but that's just my particular style. Rank and file troops you can get away with not putting quite as much attention to, because there's going to be hundreds of them, right? Or the more important characters, your heroes, your captains, yeah, they benefit from a lot more interim layers, and those fine edge highlights really help kind of the pop in amongst all the rank and file troops on the tabletop. Oh, you see, yes, I'm Mr. Ministry. Everyone knows this, or at least it's a self-given moniker that I appear to have inherited from the channel. Everybody calls me Mr. Ministry. So my heart would say Gondor. My heart would say 1,000 soldiers of Gondor. But also, since doing the Throne of Skulls board and painting all those pikemen, and having a lot of the swordsmen and the lowered pikemen that I haven't actually painted or built yet, a little bit of me, and this has happened while I was painting them as well, was kind of sitting there being like, what would 10,000 Uruk-hai look like on the tabletop? And then I did the maths based on how many Uruks in a box and the cost of Uruks in a box, and I got very sad, and that idea very quickly disappeared out the window. But 1,000 Uruk-hai is a lot easier to do than 10,000, and I'm a good chunk of the way there with a good couple of hundred. So I think if I had to pick one now, it would probably be Uruk-hai warriors. And you never know, I'm staring at a massive block of swordsmen right now in my cabinet, half of which is painted, half of which is, and that's not counting all the ones I haven't yet built. You never know, you might see them on the channel in the future. I probably have to say Uruks. Oh, well, flattery will get you everywhere. I mean, you'll have to check with Mrs. Mithril, my wife. She's clearly got good taste. What can I say? Or maybe it's just been writing and editing. I have no idea. And if you've got any idea, please feel free to tell me. No, obviously, it's this, having the ability to turn what has been my hobby for a long time and turn it into my job is something that a lot of people dream of, and I'm very fortunate that I can do that. Making videos, creating content for you guys, being able to kind of give back a little bit to the community that's given so much to me over the years. I'm very grateful for the opportunity for, and just to be able to share a little bit of my take on the hobby and the way I do things, hopefully to inspire a few people, to help a few people, and that's all I really want to do. The issue I have is, where do I draw the line between what's work and what's hobby? Everything at the moment, or at least up to this point, since starting YouTube, I was filming, and everything was edited myself, and then everything was content. I didn't really have any hobby that I did for myself, and that's when the hobby became ultimately work overall, which is, not what you want the whole thing to be. So I've taken some projects for myself just to have as breaks from work that I can paint and I can get the creative juices flowing again. But yes, this is what I do. I make videos for you guys, how to paint guides. I've got some profile comparisons and rulebook stuff coming out. We are doing more back reps down at the studios, up and running for you guys. We've started doing some PDF guides as well. They're live on our Patreon, which if everyone wants to go head over there, they're more than welcome to. You can support us for as little as £1 a month, $1 a month, I think it is. But there are some PDF guides there as well. Our ultimate paint conversion chart as well. No, it's a dream, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be able to do what I love as a job and give back to the community that I'm so grateful to be a part of. Yeah, the Discord is a thing that's been on my mind for a while, actually. It came around when I first started doing Pallid Mithril, and I was doing commissions at the time, and when you're first starting up commissions, you take on all the work because you never know when more work's going to come along, and I didn't quite have the infrastructure in place to kind of manage my time as well as I should have done. I took on too many big armies, and there was too much work, and I was still trying to get content filmed, edited, and out, starting out, and I thought, we'll do the Discord, we'll do Instagram, we'll do everything else, and get all these irons in the fire at once, and it completely far too much that I could deal with. I'm very lucky now that I have Mrs. Mithril on board, even though she now gets to spend an awful lot of her day with me, which could be a bad thing, I don't know. So it's taken a lot of the pressure off my shoulders, and we can really start putting some fire behind it now. But yeah, Discord was one of the things that just got pushed to the back burner. I just didn't quite have the capacity in my head to deal with it at the time. And it's just one of those things that I've just not got around to picking back up again. But now, yes, I'll be jumping back on it as soon as I can. Especially now we're settled more with Ava, Mini Mithril, and things are a little bit more kind of settled. It's definitely and socials are under control, which is the main thing. The socials and the and pushing out the 360s and the digital content's more in hand now. Again, my long-suffering wife and business partner has done nothing but bring amazing stuff to the channel and the stuff we put out. So big props to you, wife. I love you. You are amazing.
I know.
She knows. So yes, the Discord will get up and running again. I'm very conscious about that. I'm not quite sure when, because it's going to be one of those things that we kind of have to kind of work out how to build up and how to manage, but it will be coming back. I haven't completely forgotten about it, I promise. I'm just really, really sorry. I have been a bit MIA. Sorry. Funny you should say that. It has been something that has been on my mind a lot. I'm very, very conscious of it. It's been received really well. You guys have really enjoyed the Quest of Ringbearer so far, and I'm just very, very sorry for a start that we have let it fall by the wayside a little bit. Real life will get in the way. We've had Little One on the scene. We've done an awful lot of renovating, as you can obviously see from Mithril Towers, and it's just one of those things we haven't managed to consistently get going. Also, we hit a point in the book where everything needed a really involved board to play on, so there was a lot of time building these boards. I mean, you guys have seen Barnum's Tomb and Dwyer-Delph, to name the two most complex ones. So we also had to try and source everything and build Khazad-dûm, which we've now got and is ready to go. We've got that kind of out now, ready to film, actually. Let's see. We have a Khazad-dûm pillar. There it is. With some awesome little OSL on there. Just cheeky little dry brush for OSL. Right from the Balrog. So, yes, Quest of the Ringbearer will be starting up again very, very soon. I'm going to brandish a pillar in your face. I'm brandishing my pillar of doom, my Khazad-dûm. Now the edition is out, the rulebook has dropped. Jeb is coming around tomorrow, and we're going to be going through the rulebook with the Quest of the Ringbearer scenarios and just seeing how the new edition impacts how the quest will run. Because obviously now we've got intelligence checks and models have got more war gear, different stats. We're going to kind of just go through and just see what, if anything, it changes drastically. And then tomorrow we'll be filming an update, which will be released sometime next week, detailing how the quest might change, what new rules are going to be in place, what we might not add to the quest of the Ringbearer, depending on if it breaks any scenario specifically. And now that we've managed to get the board done and the models done, I think I've got 6 wood elves to paint, and a host of Urukai for our end when we get to there. But Quest of the Ringbearer is 100% coming back. I can promise you that, and I can promise you that based on this ridiculous purchase I made at Warhammer World last time we went up there. I got a £20 voucher for my birthday. So you go and buy toys. So you get a £20 voucher. What do? You go and buy a £140 kit of resin, don't you? So we have Amon Hen. Amon Hen is ready to go. Well, not ready to be painted. But yeah, I'm just, it's the hobby logic. You get a £20 voucher, you go buy £200 worth of resin. That's what you do, right? Because that's just me. So yes, Quest of the Ringbearer is 100% coming back. So we've got all the Fantasy Fellowships I'm going to take through as well. And it's coming back very, very soon, hopefully. So, thank you. That's an interesting one. I get a lot out of gaming. I do a lot of the Games Workshop tournaments for Middle-earth, Throwing Skulls, GT. So I get a lot out of that. I do a lot of the independent events for Marvel, for Malifaux as well. Quite heavily ensconced in there. I get a lot out of the game, and I haven't done nearly as many Middle-earth independent events as I'd like to do. Short of 7 Stones, which you ever get the chance to, Damien O'Byrne, he runs an amazing event. I think it's mid-May, end of May. 7 Stones, phenomenal event if you have tickets for it. Thoroughly recommend, but I digress. But for me, the magic comes in painting. There's something about being able to just sit there for a day, for a couple of hours, switch off from the outside world, and just kind of let your creativity flow and pour through onto a model. And then coming away with a finished result that you're really, really happy with. It's probably my favourite part of the hobby if I had to pick just one. But we all collect plastic. There is no greater thrill than going on an online store and just buying a load of plastic. You know you're not going to paint for a significant number of years. I absolutely do. When I first started this a couple of years ago, I went through Games Workshop and I made a list of every single miniature in the range that I could do a tutorial for. Somewhere on my computer I've still got that massive Bible of miniature. The intention was, at least back then, to have a tutorial for every single miniature in the range. Some will be quite similar. My thought process behind it was, if you want that specific miniature, not have as many variables and as many model tutorials out so that anybody could search for anything they wanted and I would have something to offer them. Ideally is what my goal was. I've made a good inroads into it, but the big problem I've got is that Games Workshop keep releasing models. They keep bringing out more epic models, and I want to paint them old. It's on fire, ouchies! Oh, the problems of an aged hobbyist. You can keep that in a bit, that'll be fine. My throat is cracked, my bristles on my papers. That's like asking me to pick my favourite child. I've only got the one. That's really hard. They've all got, they're all phenomenal. The fact they all stand up nowadays, if I had to pick one, it would probably be, and I'm only talking about a gnat's, beard hair width. There's negligible difference in it. It would have to be Return of the King, I think. Mainly because it's the only one of the three that's got one scene that constantly brings tears to my eyes. And I'm not going to tell you what it is. I want to see what you think it is. It's got some of the most epic and well-constructed cinematography and the battle scenes in there, and some of the most pivotal moments from the story are in there. We used the Pelennor Field music, the Ride of the Rohirrim, for our wedding procession music, which again just brings a lot more meaning to that scene, and every time we bring that makes us feel emotional. I feel like my second would be Fellowship, only because it was the first one, right? And we're watching the appendices again right now, and just seeing again all the work that goes into it, the difficulty they had, and how much they wanted to just recreate Tolkien's work faithfully. The first one's always going to hold a special place in people's heart, right? So it probably goes Return of the King, Fellowship, Two Towers. But again, like I say, negligible difference between the three. So yeah, I'm very similar to you in probably like where we were when the hobby first came out. A lot of the metal models are absolutely timeless, and not a lot will replace that in my mind. I've got my favourite box of the Heroes, the Helm's Deep box, because that is probably the best box of Heroes I think I ever painted up. Obviously the Fellowship of the Ring box was really nice as well, because that's the first time you get your Fellowship. But yes, the metal models are timeless and classic. And I'm one of these people that I will always be happy to take up metal model. Don't get me wrong, I was more than happy for the Balrog to move to plastic, because sticking those metal wings on the Balrog was not fun. So again, like with any model race, right? There are some good and there are some not so good. I still remember the first Numenorians that came out, which they haven't yet had a new update for, which everyone's itching for, the old Numenorians and the High Elves. And if they do what they're currently doing with the new plastics, like having the new Rohan box come out, which has got some of the most beautiful plastic sculpted troops I think I've seen in a long time. And even like the hero models, the Gandalf the White One, Shadowfax, Saruman, AML, all those heroes, I think they take what the metal models did so well and they have elevated it. Obviously, again, some good, some bad, but I remember looking at the Helm Hammerhand model when that first was teased. And obviously I've not seen the War of the Hero at this point. I've got any friend reference for it, and I'm kind of sitting there going, who's this angry Santa Feather? Where's my Helm Hammerhand and all this Rohan regalia? Where's my Royal King of Rohan? And just thought, what's this bearded, muscle-bound beast doing on my tabletop? And yeah, I was completely wrong, because now having seen the film and having actually painted the model for YouTube, I can honestly say he's one of the most detailed models to come out of Games Workshop for a while. And I think that's a trend that they're following with all the new releases they're doing. The model was fantastic and great to paint. And yes, we're getting a lot more Forge World resin, which comes at a price. Of course it does, because Forge World is premium. But you know what you're getting for that money. Forge World has always been consistent. It's always been top quality when it comes to detail and miniatures. So I also think that the models they release, you can't do them justice in a photo. Quite a lot of the promos for them haven't looked as good as they should do. Particularly Gandalf the White, particularly the Three Hunters as well. Legolas's face in photos looks a bit off, but actually having played the model and going up to Warhammer World and seeing them in the cabinets, and you think, actually, that looks really, really nice. Ultimately, yes, I've got a lot of fondness for the old metal models. I always will do, and I'll always be happy to paint them up. But I am super optimistic and super excited to have all these brand new plastics coming out, and the fact we're still getting all these new plastics coming out is phenomenal. It just shows you how much this hobby means to the people that look after it, that make it, and that play it and paint it themselves. So I'm actually going to do a proper video on this and like sit down and talk with you guys. I'll either do it in a live stream so I can interact with you guys one-to-one, or I'll do it as a video and we can kind of react off comments and I can react after that. Because it's something that's very important to recognise and very important to address when you do start getting burnt out. It's not the kind of thing you're going to notice until you're already there. So if you can pick up on any of the early signs, then that's probably a good indicator that you're starting to get a bit burnt out. Ultimately, you've got to remember, we're doing this hobby for fun, for enjoyment. And the moment it starts becoming a chore, it's probably the biggest indicator that you should probably take a little bit of a break from it and do something else for a while. Currently dealing a little bit with burnout at the moment, because the idea of sitting down and painting at the moment for me is a bit much for me to deal with. I'm pushing through it, I'm getting there, I'm looking after myself, don't worry, and I've got my long-suffering wife who is very much looking after me as well. Deals with a lot of plastic toys in her workspace. I've currently got Wolf on the painting desk. It'll be coming out sometime hopefully next week for a tutorial. Focus, camera, focus. Focus on Wolf. And I'm finding personally for me, like, the idea of sitting down and painting 50 Shades of Black on a model at the moment is a bit overwhelming. You know, I'm taking steps to do that, to get through that. Make sure you're taking regular breaks, look after yourself, make sure you get some rest and some sleep, because it's a massive strain on the eyes as well. And ultimately, also just change your projects. You know, if you're dealing with a big project, a big load of troops or a big army, change it up. I'm working through a massive Gondor army, and I found that what kept me going through that was being able to jump over to a Marvel Crisis model and paint something in bright yellow and green or purple spandex, just to completely change up what I'm painting, how I'm painting, and like my colour palette, and it just kind of helps refresh those hobby juices a little bit. My worst burnout was a particular commission I took, and I can say this now: do not ever attempt to fine edge highlight wicker. All the Marhood models with the wicker shields, their wicker camel armor, everything. I, in my infinite wisdom, and wanting to give the best to the client that I had at the time that I possibly could, decided to edge highlight every single strand of wicker, and it was probably the worst decision I could have made in hobby. A dry brush would have given me just about as good a result. It would have saved me so much mental stress and anguish, and that was the worst burnout I ever had, because the idea of going and doing more of those models, I was genuinely almost in tears over it, because there was about 50 models and each one needed edge highlighting wicker. That's before you take into account any of the weapons, any of the skin, any of the cloth, any of the actual camels, anything. Take the approach which will give you the best result that minimizes the stress on your head, in your brain, and ultimately don't look forward to painting a model. Communication is key. Try and make it a shared passion. I get no end of joy of finishing a model I'm particularly happy with and running down to my wife, eager-eyed, whimsy in my face, and look what I painted. And usually she's in the middle of something or dealing with a child. So yes, very nice, dear. I'm working. Always very supportive and very understanding. My wife, Mrs. Mithril, as her fame grows on the channel just through me.
Riding on the coattails.
Riding on the coattails of greatness. Behind every great man there's a woman rolling her eyes. Yeah, just careful planning, a good structure, and having a healthy hobby life balance is key. I've always said that nothing I'm ever doing in here is anywhere near as important as anything that Stace or Ava ever need. Paint can be remixed, models can be stripped and started again, but it is just having a careful balance and communicate with your partner, and just make sure you're spending that time. And I can't wait for when Ava gets old enough to start painting her first models. I'm super excited for that. Sitting in the office with a little painting station set up and just seeing how she does. Maybe it's something she wants to take on forward, maybe not, but to give her that experience and to share that with her, I'm so excited for. My best mini, I can't narrow it down to one. I can narrow it down to three, and they're three of kind of the same model actually. I've got a Gandalf the White on Shadowfax, a Saruman on Mounted Horse, and my Radagast on foot are three models in particular that I am super happy with how they came out. I think particularly the Radagast, because it's balancing an awful lot of autumnal colours, a lot of browns, a lot of greens, a lot of those nature colours, and trying to create a really impactful model on the tabletop. Gandalf and Saruman for different reasons, because Gandalf is just all white, and white was one of those colours that I always struggled with. So being able to tackle him with a new sculpt and bring out what I think is actually quite nice looking Gandalf was like a little mini victory for me. And I'm really happy with how he looks. And Saruman for the same reason as well, because he's a slightly different challenge when it comes to painting white, and you're trying to create some malevolence in your character. So those would be probably my three favourite models, with Radagast maybe just pipping the top because I'm really happy with how they fit now. My first painted model. I actually have my first painted model. Back in the days of 7-8-year-old Tom running into his local hobby shop, picking up the first box of models he thought looked cool. And it turns out it was, if I can reach for it, Captain Me! 1999. I don't want to think. I was 9 years old. That's mad. Absolutely mad. A Tau Fire Warrior. And this is before I worked out what spray undercoats were. This dude got a coat of black paint, Chaos Black back then, and then shining gold over the guns and the armour, and that was it. That was done. He had the goblin green base and the general big chunky sand, as was typical back then. But important to recognise how far you've come with your painting journey. Now, I didn't even mould line this dude. I didn't even clip all the flash off. Yeah, so that is the first one I ever painted. I also have the first Lord of the Rings model I ever painted, which was in 2005. Sounds about right. But this is the Fellowship of the Ring Legolas model, who looks like Orlando Bloom if you left him out in the sun for 3 days, or stuck her in the microwave. Also, don't sit in the microwave, but it's metal. Do not do that. But yeah, that is the first painted Lord of the Rings model I ever did, which at the time I was super proud with. But I like to keep these around, and I keep them in the cabinet of pride of place, because I always like to look back and see kind of how far we've come, and this is the most recent iteration, and it's important to recognise the progress you make as a hobbyist. Right, that is the most recent iteration of this model, which I'm being told to spin. Spin, Legolas, spin! He's looking a little bit less melty, which is always good for an elf. But yeah, I keep these models around, I keep them to hand, and every now and then I'll go and look at them and I just think, yeah, this is how far you can measure your hobby journey based on your first model and your latest model. And ultimately, if you could look at a model you've painted and say, I'm happy with that, then as far as I'm concerned, or as far as you should be concerned, it requires no changing, it is perfect, right? Never compare yourself to other hobbyists, because your work, as long as you're happy with it, doesn't need to change whatsoever. My worst sculpt of the game? I don't really have a worst sculpt. I have a sculpt that I like the least. I suppose it's the same thing, right, really? I'm trying to politician my way around this answer. For me, in the Middle Earth range particularly, it would have to be the plastic wood elves, the pajama elves as apparently they're termed. Coming off the old metal, again, going out to the metal sculpts, which are really, really lovely with the bows, which are the ones I'm going to be using for Quest of the Ring Bearer. And there's just something about these plastic elves. There's a lot of faces kind of blending into arms, not a lot of definition. Like, the faces themselves aren't very well sculpted in my opinion. Again, might just be the paint job. I don't know. I've never actually sat down with a box and tried to do them. But there's nothing about that box that struck me as, I must have this box, I really want to paint this box. A Wood Elf tutorial will be coming, and I'll be using the metal models for that. And they're very similar, so you can just translate that to the plastics if you happen to have that. But that will probably be the sculpt I like the least from the range, because there's just, it doesn't, I just like the kids. 100% will be doing a mimic painting tutorial. It's one I've wanted to do for a long time. It comes with the unfortunate caveat of being priced at £74. So it's not just an easy thing that I can go and pick up. I have painted a few mimics in the past actually. I did one particularly for a commission. It was really cool. So it had the standard Oliphant paint scheme, the grey, and for the main body of it. But the tarpaulins for the Howler were a really nice kind of beigey tan, because the guy wanted like blues and beiges for his sand-themed Haradrim, which was really striking and really cool. I think I've got some photos somewhere. I might put them up. I don't know if I can find them on a hard drive somewhere. But yes, a mimic will be coming 100%, and I'll do it in the standard kind of the red Howler. Obviously, you've got the scenic base as well. There's a lot to a mimic, so it takes a significant amount of planning. And again, that price tag just means I have to really, really be ready to do it when it comes to it. So, but yes, it will be coming. And also, feel free to gift the channel a mimic if you really want to. Oh god, yeah, you guys have been asking for a Gladiator for quite a while actually. That is another one that's very high on the paint list, particularly from requests you guys have been asking for a while. I've just been trying to work out how I'm going to do them, because my Galadrim army I did for a doubles army, I did it all non-metallic because apparently I hate myself. So I'm just trying to work out the best way of either incorporating that into a tutorial or the best way to paint the particular style of Galadrim in true metallics, and also just picking up a couple of them. I need to keep an eye out for a blister, because apparently I painted all the ones I had. Yes, 100% going to be coming. I can only apologise that I've not tackled it sooner. As soon as I can get hold of one, I've got a tutorial nailed down, I'll get one out for you. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for all your questions. This was an absolute blast to film, and something a bit different for the channel. Hopefully I've been able to answer as many of your questions as I could. If I have missed your question, please fire it back over to us either on Instagram, Facebook page, TikTok, or on the community tab on the YouTube page. I'm also going to put the initial feelers out there for another community showcase. If you've got pictures of models or dioramas or anything you're working on that you want me to show off in the community showcase, the first two will receive really well and are really fun to do. It's a great way of being able to show off some of the community models as well. Don't forget, new tutorials will be dropping every single week. I've got Wolf coming out, I hope sometime next week. We've got an update for Quest of the Ring Bearer coming out next week, with a view to starting that again, hopefully sometime in February. I'm not going to be specific on what date, because it would depend on like new camera angles, working out the facility in there at the moment and how we want it to be structured again. But hopefully sometime in February, if not early March, Quest of the Ring Bearer will be dropping, and more battle reports will be coming out. I'll be doing some profile comparisons from the old book to the new edition. That's something new coming out, and we'll be restarting the Middle Earth University as well. And obviously all the usual hobby content that you guys have come to love from the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for all your questions. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, take care and happy hobbying. Bye guys.